He asked me to do this in January, I think. Yesterday at 10:21 a.m., he told me what he wanted me to talk about. I didn't see it until 10 o'clock last night, to which I responded, as you can imagine, not kindly. So you get what you get, Luke.
Understood.
You don't give direction.
And that's how you don't be a good leader.
Oh.
There's a good example for me.
He asked me there to say, to impart best business practices and qualities of leadership. And I guess the instant thing that came to my mind at that point, and something that served me well throughout my working career, and that most of that was with Rochester and Pittsburgh Coal Company. I was the properties manager for R&P, and R&P at that time, when it was operating here, was the largest, one of the largest landowners in the state of Pennsylvania. We own 40,000 acres of land and over 700,000 acres of oil and gas and coal rights. So for all the Democrats in the room, I'm the bad guy. The Republicans love me, but... And so when I retired, I got myself involved in a number of different things. And one of the things that served me well during that time, and I always like to say, is arrive early, stay late, and do the best job you can do of every task that you're assigned to do. And don't hesitate to do something that you see needs done, so long as it doesn't step on the boss's toes. In 1978, the chairman of the board of R&P Coal Company called me into his office. 78, now that was before some of you were born. He said, "Jim, I want you to fulfill my tenure with the Indiana County Development Corporation." I knew the answer to the question before the question was asked. You just didn't say no to Dr. Potter. And so here I am, 40 years later, having watched what the ICDC does. In its early days, the purpose of the organization was a pass-through mechanism for a lot of small businesses who were reaching out to the state of Pennsylvania, particularly the Pennsylvania Industrial Development Authority, for business loans to improve their business, to start their business, to upgrade their business, to buy equipment. And we really were just a pass-through. We would get the money from the state, we would give it to the business, and then we would turn around and take the check from the business and send it back to the state, less about 2.5% or 3% that we were allowed to keep for the administrative expense of what we did. In 1990, the ICDC took a plunge and bought a piece of property at the intersection of Route 119 and 22 in Blairsville, where today you see Wyotech, the Interchange Center, Biata Nursing, HW Global, Phoenix Rehabilitation, and any number of other business clients who are currently occupying that site. And so from that meager beginning in 1990, we have expanded our reach a little bit. And if you open that brochure that's in front of you, first of all, I'd like you to see there's a pen in there from the Indiana County CEO, the Indiana County Center for Economic Operations. And basically that's I call it a glorified coffee clutch. We get together once a month or so. It's the Indiana County Chamber of Commerce, the university, ICDC, the Tourist Bureau,
County
and
Commission.
the county commissioners to talk about how we can improve the economy and the economic outlook for Indiana County. In the beginning, it started out as a way of making sure that someone who contacted the Chamber of Commerce about an economic development question didn't end up being missed out by the ICDC or the other organizations who might be able to help. And the, Courtney, back.
Hey, I told you just pretend like I'm not even here.
You're not trying, but you're not succeeding very well. CEO, and that pen is a very special pen. You can't wash that ink away, so it's the 207 model that is famous for catch me if you can. We bought the property in Blairsville and we proceeded, and if you look at a drawing that looks like this, it says Corporate Campus Business Park. You can see the layout of that facility. A couple of those developments that we have done down there. The Interchange Center, which is where Biata and Learning Sciences is located. The corporate campus office building, which is also at that property, which is the Center for the NCDMM, the National Center for
It's a
Defense, Machining and Manufacturing.
There you go.
NCDMM is a lot easier. And they are located in that building. We still have some lots available down there, and they are available for purchase and development. And through the other avenues of the Indiana County Center for Economic Operations, we do have other opportunities and financing venues that we can do. One of our other projects relates to what we call High Point in Indian Springs. And back a few years ago, Congressman Murtha, who was unfortunately deceased, left us a number of years ago, was very powerful in the National House of Representatives and was bringing business to Western Pennsylvania into his district. And he had a organization that worked with the United States Navy who he wanted to help position. And so we met with them, we brought in architects and designers, and we designed a building, which you generally see today at High Point with a big glass front on Indian Springs Road. The company was headed by a group of people from Taiwan, and we had to make sure that the building met the feng shui requirements, and so we had, after we laid out the building, their person, we rotated the building 3 degrees to the west in order to meet there. But that building today is fortunately filled up. We have some space left in it, but Consol Energy occupies a large portion of it. The university occupies a portion of it for their research institute. And the compounding pharmacy is located there, as well as a large engineering firm. So the adjacent building, which was a building that was actually funded through the early days of the ICDC, it now belongs to the ICDC, and that was Core Atomic. And what their business was at one time was non-invasive blood sampling and blood pressure medications. They have since gone away, and that building is now full largely of Indiana County Office of Human Services and the Career Link, which is a job training and assistance program through state and federal funding. Another project of the ICDC has been the what we call the 119 Business Park down on across from the villages of Coral and Grayston. It is currently occupied in its total by Trinity US. They are building a pipeline they are about to build a pipeline for another Republican issue across Pennsylvania from Delmont to Evansburg, about a 58-mile pipeline. They're going to rehab for Sunoco. The project has not gotten off the ground yet, but the property is currently occupied. But it's a site that was developed by PennDOT when they rebuilt Route 119 some 15, 17 years ago. They needed a lot of material to elevate the highway, and they excavated large portions of this. And the ICDC was able to step in, take over the property, acquire the property, and have developed a place there at the request of Representative Reed to provide a place for economic development and opportunities in Center Township, Center and rural townships, to best facilitate what we could do to make a place there available for them. I want to talk a little bit about what I like to refer to as the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's the developments at Ruby Ridge. And this has become the showpiece program for the ICDC. And then you have a drawing in here of the lot plan. Currently, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation is rebuilding Route 286 in the vicinity of the Windy Ridge site, and it's very difficult to get to. We purchased approximately 200 acres several years ago and have begun the work of development for the sake of economic development opportunities. We were fortunately there at the time when Krebs United Publication had their fire a few years ago, and were able to assist Krebs in building back on that site. Excuse me. So if you drive out 286 now and you get tied up in that forest of orange barrels and cones, the hope, there is light at the end of the tunnel. They are to finish that project by October. And so what we'll do is open up the Windy Ridge project for what we trust to be extensive development. I'm going to talk a little bit about Windy Ridge. You can see in this plan there is a road that runs from the upper left portion of that drawing to the lower right. That road will run from Route 286 through to Rustic Lodge Road ultimately. And so as a part of that project, we have to make some, what PennDOT refers to as off-site improvements, not only to 286 to give us the access for the amount of traffic that we anticipate in the Windy Ridge, but also because this road eventually will go through to the other side. We'll be making improvements at the intersection of Rustic Lodge Road and Indian Springs to upgrade that intersection so that traffic can transit through that intersection without creating too much other issue. At the current time, the only building on the property, the only industrial building on the property is the Krebs site. But we are currently negotiating with a couple of other potential buyers, and we anticipate that in the not too distant future, we will have some development programs going on there. I really would like to open the opportunity, if you have questions about what the ICDC does. I think it's important that you all understand this, since you are all in a business, various business aspects. This lineup over here with Gaza DeGory, all old friends. Chris and I have crossed paths in a similar situation here a year ago, and a little disappointed with a couple people who didn't show up today, who I was looking forward to seeing. If you have any questions about what we're doing, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, sir.
How's the development corporation formed? I mean, how do you end up on
Well,
the board or as part of it?
The Development Corporation was formed in the late 60s in response to the Pennsylvania Industrial Development Authority coming along and saying, coming out of World War II in the mid-50s, that started to make money available for a development program. There was no agency within Indiana County that was capable of accepting those funds. So the Development Corporation was created as a 501c6 corporation, which is very unique. And it's the only type of agency that is capable of accepting the money that the PDA, Development Authority, was willing to give out. And so they were very low interest loans, and as I said, they were for, some were for real estate, some were for buildings, some were for equipment only. And then we were able to circulate that money back through and help businesses. There have been a number of businesses that have been positively impacted by what the Development Corporation did in that period. Today, there are a number of them, and it becomes much more obvious because we now have businesses that are located and employment occurring that might not have otherwise been available. When we got to what ultimately became Windy Ridge, we came to realize that there wasn't a place to go in Indiana, in the central part of Indiana County, to do buildings and do industrial parks, or put an industrial building in. And so we put together a committee who looked out at actually about 19 different locations and did all the research and asked all the questions about what it amounts to how do we serve business community in Indiana County. And after a great deal of angst and anxiety and back and forth, we decided that Windy Ridge was the best place to be. Highway access, availability of utilities, a lot of other things that were out there that made that site great. And I think what we're all going to find out here in the next, probably not in this building cycle this year, but by this time next year, we will have something that we can all be very proud of. It's a whole lot easier to really be very outgoing about that when we're on the ground there. And I would make it possible, if you want to contact Luke, and we can set up a couple of, if you can arrange a few times, we can be sure to go out and do a little on-ground touring to see what that program is all about. So if you have an interest in learning some details about what Windy Ridge is going to be, Luke will be our tour guide, tour setup company here. Anything else? Yeah, Troy.
How does the ICDC attain funds to purchase these types of properties or large acreage tracts that you guys?
There are lots of different sources at both the state and particularly at the federal level through a number of various agencies.
Okay.
They're all competitive. I cannot, you see the business card in here for Byron Stauffer, who is the Indiana County Director of Planning and Development. I cannot say enough positive things about Byron and his ability to manipulate dollars and to do the things that we need to do in order to acquire these funds. Many of them are grants, most of them are loans. And because the federal government recognizes that industrial development and commercial development is a long-term prospect, we're able to pay back on an interest-only basis for a period of years before we have to start paying back the principal. And then if we plead and grovel enough, we can actually stretch that interest-only period out even for a little bit longer before we have to start. Windy Ridge is just now it's still interest-only, but it's going to happen. And then we're going to have $20 million invested at Windy Ridge by the time we get done.
Right.
Before the first commercial building was built in the highways and so forth.
Can you, I'm sorry to continue.
No.
Can you give a couple examples of the types of businesses you'll have in there? Or you think you'll
Well,
have in there?
I'm not at liberty to tell you who we're talking to at this point. We have been working with a hotel developer, and with that we hope that brings along some restaurant opportunities. Because the hotel developer we're talking about now is talking about a Holiday Inn Express type of place that doesn't have any internal food service, not to be confused with what's going to happen with the Hilton Garden adjacent to the university. And so with that, once we have a hotel in place, some of the restaurants will come. This is not intended to be a commercial development.
Right.
We have to have that kind of thing there as an attraction, but we're looking at businesses, particularly back office type businesses, assembly businesses. We are not at all interested in smokestack business.
But like giant retail stores, like.
No, that's not where it's headed.
Okay.
And
I was gonna say Dick's Sporting Goods would be great in Indiana County.
you have no idea how long that list of retail establishments is. My wife was Panera, Kohl's, and on. I think you probably all have the same sense of the kinds of places that are there. But there's a whole long list of what those companies think about the marketability of Indiana County and what's going to bring them to Indiana County. And the first thing we need to do is figure out how to keep all the people that come to IUP to stay in Indiana County, and that will go a long way creating that population issue, which then becomes attractive for the Dicks. Yeah, it's a long run to Greensburg to get a T-shirt, but.
Just order it online.
Yes.
Kind of along that line, you'd mentioned to me before starting about some of the work that you do or the programs you have in place for displaced workers.
Oh, that's a whole different field of work. That's, in addition to this, I'm also on the board of the career track, which is in the building on 286, or on Indian Springs Road. And that's a federal job training program, but that's completely unrelated to the ICDC.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
you talk a little bit about motivation, about what compels you to continue to be involved in the ICDC and other groups and boards. You're retired, you could easily go off into the sunset, spend more time with your grandkids, but you continue to put yourself out there, a lot of time and energy for volunteering. Why is that important, and what motivates you to do that?
What happens to our community if people don't volunteer? When I look around the room and look each and every one of you in the eye and say, this community nor any other can last long if there aren't people who step up to these kinds of things and do it. Yeah, I retired a number of years ago. Very fortunate that I was able to do that. So as time moved forward, I came to realize that I only volunteered for collecting a paycheck. That this work with the ICDC, as well as my time with Career Track, are simply because I believe in what they do. And one of the people who was supposed to be here understands that volunteerism even better, and I am also a long-time Boy Scout leader. And I was a little disappointed one of my Eagle Scouts who was supposed to be here didn't show up. But anyway, Andrew Neal, if you know Andrew, I've known the Neal family for a long time. And Andrew is a superior young man, excellent, excellent kid. I keep saying that, but you know, I'm old enough to be any of your parents, but maybe even grandparents. So, what motivates me? I wish I knew the answer to that at times. My golf game would be a whole lot better. Something was instilled in me by my parents. My father was very actively involved in things, and so it was as if I had no choice. But again, the community doesn't exist because there are an awful lot of positions out here, an awful lot of things that need to be done. So become involved. I think that's an important part of business. It's an important part. It was an attitude of employers. I'm afraid that has changed, but employers encouraged your participation in becoming involved in communities. My chairman, Dr. Potter, who was the chairman of the board of R&B Coal, encouraged people to be involved. He was involved, and he encouraged others to do that as well. I would like to hope that we can somehow find our way back to that, because it's an extremely important part. Society doesn't just exist because you can push a lot of buttons and get things done in a hurry. You have to learn to interact with one another. You have to do things that are for the better good of the group, and not just for the better good of your employer or your company. Thank you. Yes, I'm on the board. I serve with Jim on the Chamber of Commerce Board, president of the ICDC, Career Track, and then the real time-consuming one is the Boy Scouts. So you can understand that?
Yes, sir.
So anyway, let's get back to the ICDC. Are there any other questions about that subject? Well, if they're not, then you can all get back to work on time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Robin Gorman was much more philosophic for you, so you needed something that's just a little more entertaining. If you have any questions, my card is not in there. I have a few of them in my pocket. But if you have any questions about what the ICDC does, or if at some point in time you would like to become involved, we are a private, independent board. We are not, although it says Indiana County, we are not affiliated with Indiana County, other than the fact that we work with the county because when we actually hire the planning and development to do our staff work, and we pay the county for the use of their staff in order to do the things that need to be done within the Development Corporation. But we are an independent board. There are myself and 12 board members, and we have an open chair at the moment. We do all of our own choosing as to who we have. We have the university as represented, with a number of businesses, a number of attorneys, a number of banks. And we collectively try to do what's best for all of us. So thank you. Luke, they're all yours.
Now, unfortunately for you guys, Jim left 5 minutes, so I'm gonna torture you very, very briefly.
I'm gonna leave these cards over here if anybody wants to pick up or have a further conversation.